ES Audio.
From the Evening Standard in London, this is The Leader, and I'm Mark Blunden. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II has died. The 96-year-old monarch had been ill for some time and under medical supervision, with the family gathering by her bedside at Balmoral. In a statement, the palace said the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Elizabeth II was the nation's longest-reigning monarch, serving as head of state for more than 70 years. We're joined by Evening Standard Associate Editor Jonathan Prynn and Royal Historian Dr Ed Owens. Dr Owens, what are the protocols in this situation, and what is Operation London Bridge?
There isn't a specific set of arrangements for the demise of the crown, as it is referred to, so the death of a monarch. The Operation London Bridge that you refer to is the plan of action that kicks into being as soon as the death of a monarch, or the death of Elizabeth II in this case. And that will include not only her funeral preparations, but also the process of preparing for a new reign as well.
What did the Queen mean to the United Kingdom?
I think the Queen meant a great deal to the United Kingdom. I think she meant many different things to different people. I think the power of Elizabeth II as monarch was really rooted in the fact that, yes, she appeared as this ordinary sort of family woman. She was a mother, she was a grandmother, a great-grandmother, and people related with that intimate family image. And yet, I think her greatest success as a monarch is that she has been the most perfect example of a constitutional monarch. She has not expressed her political opinions publicly. She's always been extremely discreet. And this has meant that the British monarchy under Elizabeth II did not become at any point contentious or controversial because of its embroilment in politics, certainly not through the actions of the monarch. And I think that is significant. She set a high moral example in terms of her constitutional behaviour.
What do you think her legacy will be, and how did she touch people's lives in the UK, the Commonwealth, and the rest of the world?
I think the key legacy with Elizabeth II will be this emphasis on public service. It wasn't always the case that members of the British royal family sought to perform public service, to perform duty for the British population. That's a relatively new invention, going back just over 100 years. But more than any other monarch before her, Elizabeth II's reign was defined by this emphasis on service and duty. And those words, I think, will be carried forward by her successors as well. I think her reign really transformed the institution in terms of that particular emphasis. It's also the case that, of course, she has performed a public role, not just in the United Kingdom, but, as you suggest, in the Commonwealth. And again, the emphasis there was on performing her duty as head of the Commonwealth, trying to keep that organisation together, because it has at times lacked meaning, lacked direction. And if it wasn't for certainly the industry and activity of the head of the Commonwealth, Elizabeth II, then arguably the geopolitical organisation of the Commonwealth would not have kept together. So I think there are important legacies that are at work here, and it really depends where you are in the world, where you are in Britain, how you've seen the monarch.
What will the continuity now be for the royal family?
Well, there are 5 key moments following the demise of the crown. These are overseen by the Cabinet Office and Buckingham Palace. There will be an accession council held within the next 24 hours. This is where the proclamation of the new monarch is agreed by privy councillors, because, of course, the new sovereign must be publicly proclaimed. Parliament will meet, and oaths of loyalty to the new monarch will be sworn. And then there will be a first Privy Council meeting, officially, probably at the throne room, Buckingham Palace, where the Privy Council approve the arrangements for the lying in state and funeral of Elizabeth II. Of course, those arrangements have been made long ago, but they must be officially approved by the Privy Council. The new monarch will then make a personal declaration committing himself to the service of Britain and the Commonwealth. And after that, we will have a lying-in state where well-wishers will be able to visit Elizabeth II to bid their final farewells.
Can we draw any parallels from history that reflect on this moment?
There is no specific example in a modern period to this particular moment. What is significant is that at the time of Queen Victoria's death in 1901, members of European royal families from across the continent sent representatives to England. And I feel that there is this kind of converging taking place today at Balmoral, with members of the Queen's immediate family traveling to Balmoral to make sure they are present with her in her final moments. So I think there is a historical moment that links Elizabeth II with Queen Victoria. But of course, the nature of the British royal family was very different then, in that it was deeply rooted and deeply connected to Europe and this wider group of royal families who played a key role, as it turned out, after Victoria's death.
Jonathan, you've reported on many royal stories in your career. How do you think the Queen touched people's lives?
Do you know what? I think we're about to find out, really find out. I think, obviously, a massive upswelling of affection and I think a realisation and a dawning of just how much the Queen means to most people in the UK. And I think that was rather encapsulated by her Paddington Bear sketch, which I think, really touched people, the way that the Queen has that sort of, playful side to her as well, but also that incredible devotion to duty that's been core to her being since she was, since she was a teenager, in that famous speech to the Commonwealth in 1947 about her duty, whether it be her life be long or short, her duty to the country and the Commonwealth.
Jonathan, what do you think the Queen's legacy will be?
It was that amazing devotion to duty that was absolutely core to her being ever since she was a little girl, and particularly obviously after the accession in 1952. I think most people can see someone for whom public life or public service was an absolute lifelong commitment and duty, which came before anything else, even came before the happiness of her family, I think, in many cases. She was totally devoted to that job of head of state, of monarch, head of the church, head of the Commonwealth, a world figure. She was representing the United Kingdom. I think that touched people. I think on a more human level, the fact that she, throughout this, obviously in recent decades in particular, there's been a lot of tragedy in her life. The breakup of her children's marriages, particularly, the annus horribilis that she talked about in 93, I think it was, the murder of Lord Mountbatten, the terrible death of Princess Diana. These events were very, very tough, but she had to weather the various storms of her life and get on with the job of being the head of state, and all the duty and all the work and all the commitment and the openings and the documents she had to sign and the audiences with the Prime Minister and all that stuff that goes with the job. She never wavered, I don't think, once, and I think people will always remember that sense of duty in a world where I think our politicians and almost all public figures are seen with less respect than they were, certainly when she ascended the throne in 1952. But that respect has never really wavered a jot for her. She's always been a formidably respected figure because she just got on with the job, and there was never a whiff of scandal about her role. No suggestion that anything awry in her private life or in her public life. And I think people over many decades of service, I think that produced a very deep ingrained level of respect amongst monarchists and Republicans alike. I think you'd have to be a very, very hardline Republican, obviously, particularly today, but over recent years, who would say that the Queen was not an admirable person. That reputation will go on with her in the years to come.